Hello, I'm Andrew Fryer, an evangelist at Microsoft in the UK, and this is a bunch of hexadecimal data, which is completely incomprehensible to any business user, and indeed to most IT professionals. What it is a bunch of spatial information in a table that's got all the zip codes in for the United States. In order to make sense of this data, we need to get it into SQL Server and then plot it properly on a map. I got the data from Codeplex, which is where Microsoft and some of its associates put up free code and projects. It's also where you'll find all the sample data for SQL Server 2008, 2005 and so on. And in addition to using this census data, I'm also going to use the latest SQL Server 2008 R2 AdventureWorks Cube and Data Warehouse. First of all, we need to get the data from this download into SQL Server. As you can see, there are 4 tables here. And so what I've done is, I've already run this actually, I've actually just written some simple SQL command, because you don't want to open up these huge files, which are even larger when they're unpacked, in Management Studio. This is the command I use to pull in one of those files. -s is the name of the server, -d is the database I've already created to put the data into, -e indicates that I'm using Windows Authentication, and the input file is the file we've just downloaded. Repeat that for all 4 of these files, and you'll then have the data in SQL Server. If I now open up Management Studio, you can see that I've got my US Census database in here, and now I've got these 4 tables in. Here's the zip code it one expanded, with its geometry field, this special new data type we have in SQL Server 2008 R2. Perhaps simplest to show is if I expand the state table and maybe actually have a look at the data inside it, select the top 1000 rows. This all looks fairly familiar until we get to over here and it's complete garbage. But notice in SQL Server 2008 R2, when I run a spatial query, I also get a spatial results tab, and when I do that, and zoom it in a little bit, move it across a little bit, and so on, you can begin to see the good old US of A in all its glory. So you can actually visualize any spatial data up to 1000 rows just using Management Studio. So we've got that data in here, and as I said before, we've also got the AdventureWorks Data Warehouse here, the R2 version here, and if I collapse this, we've also got the cube loaded. And if I look at that in some detail now, you can see we've got various measure groups here, and then down here we've got the geography dimension. So that's all the data in place, which is essential to any BI project. What we need to do now is to see how that all works in reporting services. So now I'm going to go over to SharePoint, because I've got reporting services installed in integrated mode. This is SharePoint 2010, and I've created a special library for my reports called Reporting. Inside that library I've already created 3 folders, one of which is going to have my shared data sources in here. I've already created those, and so I have a connection to the US Census SQL Server database here, and I've got the AdventureWorks sales queue here. You can see that SharePoint is really integrated with Office now. When I click Documents, I get the Office ribbon. If I create a new document, it knows that because this is a reporting services library, I get these 3 options, and I'm going to create a new Report Builder report. In Report Builder 3 in SQL Server 2008 R2, I get this nice friendly wizard, and from that I'm going to choose the map wizard to guide me through the process of creating a map. My first option is to create the polygons that are going to appear on my map, and rather than use the standard map gallery, as that's only for America, I'm going to use a SQL Server spatial query, even though I've only got American data, because this is going to show you how you could adopt this approach anywhere in the world. So I now need to create a spatial data query. Here I can see the connections that I already showed you, and I want this one for the census database. I get the familiar SQL Server query builder, and I want the state table. And you can see the geometry field here. If I click Next now, it will immediately try and render that map. And if you haven't got any spatial data in there, this is where it will fail. I'll just move that into the centre of the screen, and we'll try and make America as big as possible. There, I think that'll do. If I click Next now, I get a chance to decide how to colour the map in. I can just have random colours, much as you would do in an atlas. Or I can make the colours dependent on data, and that's what I'm going to go for. My final choice is to also put point data on top of that, and I can add that in later as well if I want to. So you can have multiple visualizations on the one chart. So this query hasn't got my analytical data in, so I can add another data set in. And that's what makes the map control unique, this ability to be able to add in other data. And in fact, not only does that come from maybe a different query, it can actually come from a different data source. So here I'm now going to connect to the cube. You could connect to Oracle, DB2, anything you like really that reporting services will understand. If I click Next here, reporting services is smart enough to understand that I'm connecting to a cube, and therefore gives me the cube browser. I can see my geography dimension down here, and I want to get that right first of all. So in the geography dimension we've got a state province column, which I'm going to drag in, and we've got a country, and I actually want to filter by country to just return the data we need, as it's much more efficient to do this at query time rather than pull all the data into the report and then muck about with it there. So I know that my US census data only contains data for America, so clearly I only want to get the United States back here. And it's as simple as clicking a few boxes. Now I want some analytical data in, and I know that we only analyse data for resellers by our geography dimension. So there's no point using the internet sales. I'm just going to pick up the reseller sales amount in this case to do that. And as soon as I do that, it runs the query, and that all looks fine. If I click Next now, reporting services needs to understand how to join these two sets of data together. And notice what I've got highlighted here is highlighted underneath. So I'm going to check the state name here, and now I get to choose how I join it to the analytical data I've just specified. And I want state province. And you can see visually here on the screen how these two look the same, so hopefully this is all going to work beautifully. And now I can decide on the colours, and I might go for the classic red-green approach, where red is for low sales and green is for high, and hit finish. And that's pretty much me done with a simple report. All I need to do now is save it to SharePoint. And so I just choose Save As here, and you can immediately see the URL for my SharePoint site appearing. I go into my reporting library, I'll put it there, we'll call it AW Sales, and we're done. I now go back to reporting here and refresh the page. There's the report. I can click on it to run it. So that's not the most sparkling report you'll ever see in the world, but it does show you how you combine OLAP data with a spatial query and present that on a map in reporting services. I've been Andrew Fryer. Thank you very much for listening.